talking about, yeah. Ooh, so sit back, take a seat, and you gon' have to pardon my peace. Tell me how you like it, I know you excited. You gon' have to pardon my peace. You know we be vibing, all of you invited. We gon' get it pardon my peace. It's where you need to be, we got the latest tea. Don't get this game for free, yeah. We just speaking the truth, so sit back, take a seat, and you gon' have to pardon my peace.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Pardon My Peace. My name is Shay.
And I'm Danielle. Nice to see you again, guys.
Yes. So, I'm going to let you have the floor, and I'm going to listen.
So today, we are going to talk about my son.
Your son's name, you have two.
So today, I am going to talk about Parker and tell everyone about our testimony.
Yeah.
My oldest son. I touched on it a little bit in our interview, our intro episode. And there were some questions because I didn't get to get into it too much. So we're going to do that today. Parker is truly blessed. So we call him Parker. But his name is Thomas Parker III. My baby. My oldest boy. The boy who made me a mom. Yeah. I love him so much. Parker just turned 9 January 31st. It was quite the year. We'll be in the double digits next year.
He has the same birthday as my brother.
Parker was 2 weeks overdue. 14 days he stayed cooking in this belly.
Let him cook.
He did. I actually went into pre-labor a week before he came. Like full on. The whole plan was enacted. We got in the car. We were doing all the things. And for about a day. And then my contractions just slowly stopped.
Interesting.
And he was just like, just kidding.
That's childish.
So childish.
Yeah.
So childish.
That's childish.
I was not happy. And neither was my doctor because Kaiser in particular makes you deliver if you hit the 2-week mark. They actually tried to start inducing you at 1 week overdue.
Okay.
But I was 26 at the time.
6 or 27.
So I was young enough at the time and healthy enough to tell them to kick rocks. So they every time I went to the doctor, they were like, we're going to schedule your induction. I said, if you want to, but I'm not going. And that happened several times until finally we were almost at the 2-week mark. And the doctor was like, seriously, Danielle, I'm going to schedule your induction for Sunday. You have to be there. And I said, but I'm not. But I went into labor that Saturday, and he actually came on that Sunday. And the doctor thought he won. And I was like, oh, no, you didn't. I didn't induce. I wasn't doing that.
You didn't.
But he's here, and he's healthy. Kinda.
And then, well, you didn't know, right? You didn't know yet.
Well, no, but because I went into almost full-on labor the week before, he pooped inside. So
that's so dangerous.
When he was born,
wow.
A little before he came, when my water broke, they saw the brown in my fluid. So they got all panicked. And before that, I wanted an actual anything labor. But once they saw that, they were like, you got to get in bed. So I got in the bed. And then when he came, the NICU came in. And they were going to take him because he had swallowed so much of the meconium, which is his poop. And Yeah. So when it was like time to push, my whole room flooded with NICU people. And I was like, what's happening? You know, I'm just like, don't worry about it.
I'd be like, oh, heck no. You do that to a woman that's giving birth.
Exactly. And I just heard, I only knew it was NICU because I heard the doctor tell the nurse, tell the NICU. And I was like, wait, why? And so, but God is so good and he lives in my baby.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he came out and they took him to the side and they were doing all the APGAR tests and stuff and he wasn't doing well. The NICU doctor came over to tell me and Thomas, we're going to take him because he's not responding well. As she's telling me this, I hear a nurse say, oh, dang. And Parker had ripped the tube out that was suctioning his lungs and was good. So then the nurse came over as the doctor was talking to me and was like, fine. And then the doctor was like, well, I guess he hurt me and he doesn't want to leave you. Here's your baby.
I know, it's so crazy how even at that young, you don't want to say young age, but just newborn, they're incredible. They do some stuff.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Like, so that was the beginning of Parker's life journey. And it was so crazy. But at that time, that's all we were thinking about. It was just like, oh, thank you, Lord, for, not having to have to go to the NICU. Yeah. He was healthy. He was nursing. He latched all the things. He was great. In the back of our minds, however, when I was 3 months pregnant, we found out that Thomas had the trait for sickle cell. So I knew since I was 10 that I had the trait. And because I am the person that I am and I love the person that I am, I was very like, I'm not having a child with sickle cell disease. I'm responsible. I know I have the trait. I'm going to ask everyone that I date if they have the trait. If it's a yes, we done. Get you on the flip side. Hope you find someone that doesn't have the trait. So,
I'm aware of this story. Yep. My mom has the trait too.
And told him the whole shaboodle, and told his mom. And his mom said, no, I got it tested as a child. His sister has the trait, but he doesn't. So it's fine. And I said, oh, okay. And she even told me like the name of his doctor.
Yeah.
She was so sure.
Yeah.
So when I was 3 months or almost 3 months and the doctor was like, you have the trait. Husband, are you sure you don't have it? And Thomas doesn't like needles. So he was like, nah, I'm good. But my mom happened to be in the room with us. And I was just like, the strength of my mom. Babe, please, can you just take the test? Like, it's just going to be a prick.
Right?
Takes the test, we found out he has a trait. And I was devastated. Like, absolute tear my heart out of my chest and stomp on it, because how could I do everything to prevent this moment and it happened anyway? Yeah. So that's when the prayer started. And we started praying for, I already knew when I got married to Thomas that we were going to have a third if it was a boy.
Yeah.
So we started praying for Thomas Parker III, that he would be healthy and everything would be okay. And I'm very logistical. They did the test, because they test every baby for a handful of diseases, and sickle cell is one of them. They said the test would take about 3 weeks, and no news was good news. 3 weeks hit, like that day, and I did a happy dance. No news is good news. Yes! We're good.
No, yeah, exactly.
And 2 days later, whole life changed. 2 days later, Thomas was at work, And I was in my master bedroom. I can still see it. And I was holding Parker, and I got the call from Diane Batham. Hey, Diane. She's the greatest sickle cell doctor ever. She told me. And I'm a very calm individual, and like I can stay very composed. But I learned in that moment that when it comes to my kids, all of that goes out the window. So I dropped to my knees and cried. Like I can still feel it. And I called my mom because she got Jesus on speed dial.
Okay.
So I was like, you need to call your friend, lady, because I just got a horrible call. And Thomas was a commuter, so he was further than my parents were. So my parents came over and was comforting me. Then Thomas came home early, and it was like we all had to have like a literal come to Jesus moment. Okay, so my baby has sickle cell disease. Okay, next steps, and then that's when calm drill Sergeant Danielle kicked in. So it was like, I need all the boxes, but I can check them off because I'm going to do all the things that I can possibly do to make sure that this boy has an amazing life. He did not ask to come into this world. He definitely didn't ask to come into this world with a disease that he did. And I was like, this is now my life. This is now my life, is to make sure that this boy enjoys as much of his days as he possibly can. And then the doctor's visits started. And there were a ton of them. And there was a lot of blood draws. It was a lot. Mm-hmm. He was so small. Fun fact, when you have to get blood from an infant, they have to hold them down to a table. I think he was very strong. So it was a doctor and 2 nurses and me holding him down so that he could be still enough to get his blood drawn. And it went that way because he had to get his blood drawn every month or 2. And it went that way for a long time. Long time. But he was still so happy. Mm-hmm. He was such a happy boy. He still is such a happy boy. And, God knows everything. He doesn't give you more than you can handle. And I was able to handle all of the steps that were required. Mm-hmm. All of the rules that I needed to put in place. His eating, his water consumption, his everything. Everything needed to be monitored and calculated. And so I did it. And that was my job. And thank God I wasn't working. And my husband and I's plan was for me to be a stay-at-home mom. Because if that wasn't the plan, it would have became it. We would have to figure something out because I had to stay home with him. So I tried to do all the things right. I nursed for a year. No, actually for 13 months. I nursed. And he got all the vitamins and supplements. And I heard all of the yapping and yammering that everything under the sun. I was too strict. I wasn't letting him have fun. I was going too far. And I was just name it. People saying words around me. But again, God knows, and he knew that I can handle it, and I told them I would kick rocks because it's my son. Yeah. That's my baby. So your opinions, you can shove them. And if you no longer want to talk to me because my life is different now, do it.
Yeah. That definitely changed your entire life.
Oh, life.
For years.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's a ton of horror stories all in there.
When did you stop shooting like a level 4?
I didn't actually treat him like a bubble boy. I changed my life, and I changed the way children were raised in my family. But I always intended on changing that. And Parker was always able to do things because he had, Diane Batham was his nurse, actually, his first nurse, who was partnered with his oncologist and Dr. Shearer. And he had been a sickle cell specialist for 25 years. And he actually told me, like, when it came to like time for preschool or, interactions with other kids, he told me, he said he can either do it now or he can do it when he starts kindergarten and then he'll be absent a bunch. But he told me from the beginning that I needed to let him live. So it was really my burden that I carried because I never tried to put that on him like it was some sort of disability. There were certain things that he couldn't do, and we had to understand that, but I would just be there.
What were those certain things he couldn't do? Because I know you had mentioned like being in the pool, the water.
Yeah. So water was dangerous.
Being in the heat too long or in the heat at all.
Dehydration is dangerous for sickle cell. Changes, and it's not just the pool, but it's a rapid change in temperature. He's eating his water. He had to stay hydrated.
Yeah.
So his water intake was always more than anyone else's. And then my personal theory was just keep him as healthy as possible. Keep sugar out of his life because we all know sugar's poison. Make sure he's eating enough, drinking enough, getting supplements, probiotics, because he's been on, with sickle cell disease, when they turn 1, they have to go on penicillin, which tears up your gut. So from young, it was just really trying to make sure that his body was running as best as it could with the addition of all these medicines and stuff. Because the other medicine for sickle cell disease is actually a chemo medicine. And they take it daily. There was the only thing that I really stressed was water, no sugar, and pool. We were blessed to not have very many crises.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how often did he have his crisis?
About once or twice a year, he would have a crisis, which was not a lot compared to others. Oh, yeah. Even like when we go to the doctor's appointments, we would see other families with sickle cell disease and their kids. And
what did these crises look like?
So since Parker's first year, he had pneumonia a lot. I think in the first year, he had pneumonia 4 times. And it was because of the way that his body processed his sickled cells, where they went. And so that was the first hurdle. And then he had his first crisis when he was 1, almost 2, maybe 1.5. Yeah, 1, almost 2. It is scary. Parker is so strong and he internalizes so much that his first crisis I almost missed, because even at that young age he was so composed. I wasn't exactly sure what was going on. Until we went to the urgent care, and I spoke to one of the doctors there, And she said, sounds like that was the beginning of a crisis. And what had happened was one reason why I sleep with my house so cold. What had happened was that he sweat so much in the night that he got dehydrated. And it triggered a crisis. Wow. Parker always slept very hot. And I didn't learn that until he was almost 2. That was even possible. So he was just like complaining of pain. And I mean, we knew he had sickle cell disease, obviously. So it was like, okay, but that was the first time. So we didn't know, I didn't know exactly where to go or what to do. And he had had pneumonia so many times that, I wasn't aware of the crisis protocol.
Yeah.
And didn't know when I should, like, it was in the books, but I hadn't walked it out yet. So that was hard. But then after that, I knew what to look for. And Parker, kind of thankfully, his crises were always triggered by something specific. So, like, there's a lot of people who just, like, it seems random, or it can be like building up in their body for some time. But for Parker, the majority of his crises were triggered by a change in temperature. It was usually the pool.
Yeah.
And it would go from he's fine, he's playing, everything's good, to like instantly pain. Just pain. He couldn't walk. He would just be in my arms. And I was his person. So I can't even remember if he even had words, but I always just knew. I always knew. And since we do have 2 boys, I would be the one that went with him.
Yeah.
And then Thomas would stay on with Dad.
I was going to ask, how did Thomas handle that? Like, how did Thomas handle it with sickle cell? Because I know you were with Parker most of the time. He was working and stuff like that. So, like, how did he handle it with Parker?
Really, really good question. I can honestly say I don't know.
Was there ever a moment of doubt that you can't do this?
No. No. There was never a moment of doubt that I had that I can't do this. There were definitely moments where I thought I wasn't good enough. Like I wasn't good enough at helping him or caring for him. It's hard to even wrap my mind around because like there was just no other option. And I carried for a very long time that I did this to him. So there was no room for me to not think that I was it.
Yeah.
Like I was determined to just continually be better, be more, do more, love him more. I knew I was gonna cry.
That's the reality. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah, this is
so. Yeah, that was that was never an option.
Yeah,
it was never an option for me to think that I couldn't do it. I just would continually try to be better.
Yeah.
Try to be better. Even with the putting him in a bubble, that was constantly on my mind because I never wanted him to feel different. And my mom and I actually had some tough conversations because it wasn't her intention. There were several times, however, that I felt like the things that she would say would make him feel different, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And for her, she was having faith.
Yeah.
Like, just telling him to say certain things and like recite verses, and which totally, like, I'm so for all of that. It was just in that time and how it would happen, I couldn't accept it because to me it just was something that it was a way that he was being singled out. So even when he went to school and I would talk to his teachers, I would always talk to them on the side, not in front of him, because I didn't want him to feel like he was different or damaged. So I did it. That was always so important to me. Very, very important to me. Just to make sure that he was comfortable and confident in his skin. I didn't have that. And so I always wanted my kids to have that. And sickle cell disease or not, he was going to have that. Yep.
You're about to lose.
You know, I never feared him losing his life, which is only God, because Thomas and my mom both worked in the cemetery mortuary business. And Thomas personally buried several young children that died from sickle cell complications. And even through that. In that, I can tell you, those moments were like a knife to Thomas's heart.
Yeah.
Those were hard for him.
I can only imagine.
I am positive that the whole thing was hard for him, but because I was the one that was always there, he tried to be strong for me. Yeah. Which I appreciate. But when those cases would come, I would see how hard it was for him too. And another thing his doctors told us was to not stop having kids. Because my knee-jerk reaction was, well, I guess Parker's an only child. I didn't want kids in the first place. So one is good enough for me. Oh, but his doctor was like, no. And then I even talked to another mom at the hematologist's office, and she had 4 kids. 2 of them had sickle cell. And she told me, she was like, you can't live in fear, honey. If you want another kid, you have another kid. Yeah. And her kids were there getting regular blood transfusions. Parker never had to do that. But I remember one of her sons and one of her daughters had it, and they were both there, just walking around with their blood on the little pole, getting their transfusion because they were older. And she was like, I wouldn't change it. We trusted in God, and we had more kids. And you can have more kids.
We had 2? Just 2 in all?
No, they had 4.
Oh, wow. But 2 of them had sickle cell. Like, what, the last 2? First 2?
No, it was, I want to say it was like,
skip 1?
Yeah.
Skip 1.
I think I think their oldest had it, and then their third had it. So we had another baby.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even have the trait. So I call them both my little 25%ers. So take us back to biology class, Punnett squares, recessive dominant genes. 25% chance disease, 25% chance no disease, no trait, 50% chance trait, no disease. So I got 2 25s. And I love them both so much.
Both the journeys.
So the journey towards recovery was actually a very long one because Parker got his spleen removed in 2019 when he was 3. And that was very difficult in a journey within in and of itself. And that's one of the typical complications with sickle cell disease. So it's something that they actually have you look for. They teach you how to feel in the proper size of the spleen and all the things. And I noticed that he wasn't acting like himself. And I sent him to preschool. And when I brought him home, something just was not right. But he wasn't crying.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt his belly, and when I pressed on his spleen, he was tender. And I could feel what they told me that I was looking for. So, kick into Supermom.
Mm-hmm.
We need to figure this out. We need to get it going. We need to go to where we need to go. We need to do all the things. And we did. Got him to the doctor. Doctor said definitely his spleen is 4 times the size it should be. It needs to be removed.
What did they tell you why was bigger?
It's just normal. The spleen filters your blood.
Mm-hmm.
So as the cells sickle, they get caught in the spleen.
So eventually
it is due to the
sickle
sickle
cells. Okay.
Yeah. So eventually it gets too full and it starts called sequestration. And it's the spleen basically gets so clogged up with sickled cells that none of the blood can go through.
Wow.
So, or most, but it becomes a bigger problem than just a crisis. So I think it was maybe like 2 weeks later, we finally got him in for the surgery. And that was the first time that I was afraid he was going to die. The watching my 3-year-old on that gurney leave me to go into pre-op.
I can only imagine, man.
I was so strong for him at times that I didn't know what I was feeling. And that was one of those times. Because it's a long process before they can even go into surgery with transfusions and a lot of stuff. And he had to be in the ICU for a long time. And, I was just there with him. And we were figuring it out and we were doing the things and we were making it work. And then his gurney went through those double doors and I fell to the floor. And my heart, like fell out of my chest. I can still, I'm a very visual person, so I can still see it. And my parents were there, my husband was there. Yeah, they were there with me. Surgery went well. I have all the pictures. His spleen was, I still have pictures of his spleen. It was ginormous. But it was all done laparoscopically.
Wow.
So he only has 3 tiny little marks on his belly.
Wow.
I love science.
Now, because back then,
Exactly.
they weren't there yet.
They weren't there yet. But thank God, in 2019, right before the pandemic, because it was December 12th, 2019 that he had the surgery, which was actually my nephew's birthday. But yeah, it went well. His recovery went well. And he went back to being a kid. Then COVID hit.
Don't get this game for free, yeah. We just speaking the truth, so sit back, take a seat, and you gon' have to pardon my peace.